Masechet Baba Batra, Daf Kof Mem Het. We mentioned yesterday that there is no mechanism for transferring something that doesn't yet exist. Like if I want to give you next year's crop from this tree. The way to do it would be to say, I am transferring you this tree for the purpose of getting its fruit for the next year. Then I'm giving you a tangible thing, although I'm not actually giving you the entire tree, but I have to mention the tree that I'm giving you for that purpose of acquiring it. So we're going to now deal with that. Another way of doing it is that if I am giving you the tips of the tree, I don't have to give you the whole tree, but just the ends of the branches from where the fruit grows. That's something that exists right now. And so I can transfer that to you, and then you would get also the fruit. So now we have a question about that. Ibaya lehu. Deke le'echad u'ferotav le'acher mahu. Mi shi'er mekom piri or lo shi'er. What if I have a palm tree, and I give the tree to one friend, and then I give the fruit to someone else? How does that work? Or do we say that I left out the part of the tree that grows the fruit? So when I give it to friend A, let's say to Uven, I said, okay, you get the tree, but I have in mind that, okay, you're getting the whole tree except for the tips of the branches. That I'm going to give to Shimon, my other friend. So when I say to Shimon, I'm giving you the fruit, I'm having in mind that I kept out the tips of the branches, and that's what I'm giving to Shimon, and from there the fruit will grow, and therefore Shimon does get the fruit, or Lashier, or am I not reserving, leaving out to the statement to the Uven that when I say I'm giving him the tree, I am not reserving the tips from where the fruit grows, and therefore, since I gave everything to the Uven, once I do that, everything is done, everything is given. And when I say to Shimon, I'm giving you the fruit, there's actually nothing to give Shimon because he can't acquire just the fruit, and I already gave away the entire tree, including the tips, and then Shimon gets nothing. That's question one. Now, if you say that in that case I am not reserving the tips from Reuven, and therefore Shimon gets nothing, what if I'm not giving the fruit to Shimon, but I want to keep it for myself? And so I told Reuven, here, I am giving you this palm tree, and then I say, oh, I'm keeping the fruit for myself. So in that case, would we assume that since I'm keeping it for myself, not giving it to someone else, then surely I would have in mind that I'm keeping the tips of the tree, and that's why I can keep the fruit. Or maybe in that case also, once I say I'm giving you the tree, I have in mind to give you the entire tree, and I can't even keep the fruit for myself. Amar Rav Nachman, im timse lomar dekel le'echad perotav le'acher lahav shiur makom peri, dekel le'echad v'shiur perotav lefanav shiur makom peri. My tama kol legabe nafshe b'ayin yafa meshayer. Rava, in the name of Rav Nachman, we're not going to answer the first question, but we will answer the second question. And we say, if you decide regarding the first question that when I say Reuven gets the palm, a tree, and Shimon gets the fruit, that I am not leaving anything out when I give it to Reuven, not even the place from where the fruit grows, and therefore Reuven gets everything and Shimon gets no fruit. If you say that, then even if you say that, nevertheless, the second question, where I give the tree to Reuven and I keep the fruit for myself, in that case, for sure, I do get the fruit because I am keeping in mind that I'm going to keep the edges of the branches for myself. Why? Why is that case different? Because any time that you're dealing with oneself, then you reserve it generously. In other words, I'm giving something to Reuven and to Shimon, so I'm not going to be more generous to Reuven versus Shimon or Shimon versus Reuven. I'm giving everything away, and so when I say to Reuven, you get the whole palm tree, I'm not going to keep in mind, oh, I have to be extra generous to Shimon, and I'm going to keep the tips, and therefore I don't have that in mind, and Shimon doesn't get it, right? So if you say that, even if that's true, but when it comes to myself, a person generally is going to be more conscientious about oneself and give himself a generous portion, even though this guy's giving something away or selling it, whatever. So when it comes to oneself, even though I said, Reuven, you get this tree, but I get the fruit, then certainly I have in mind that I'm going to keep anything I need to keep in order to also get the fruit, including the tips of the trees. Amar Rabbi Abba l'Rav Asher Anan ad Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish matninan la. Now Rabbi Abba tells Rav Asher, this statement that you quoted in the name of Rav Nachman, I also use it, but I actually applied it to a different statement, to a statement of Shimon ben Lakish, Resh Lakish. De'amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, hamocher bayit lachavero, v'amar lo al menat shediotah elyona sheli, diotah elyona shelo. Resh Lakish says, if someone sells a house to someone else, to Reuven, and he says, I'm selling to you on condition that the upper story I'm keeping for myself. I'm giving you the whole house, but the upper story I wanna keep. Then he keeps the upper story, right? That's an easy case. Now we ask, a question came up. If I say I'm going to give a house to you, to Reuven, and then I say I'm going to give the upper story to someone else, to Shimon, does that work? Am I holding something back when I give it to Reuven and I tell him you're going to get the whole house? Did I have in mind to hold back the upper story, and therefore when I give it to Shimon, Shimon does get it? Or maybe not. When I tell Reuven, you're getting the whole house, that's it. I already gave away the whole house. And therefore, when I go and tell Shimon later on, you get the upper story, then Shimon does not get it because I didn't have in mind to hold it back from Reuven. That's question number one. And a follow-up question, even if you say that when I give the house to Reuven and the upper story to Shimon, that I didn't hold it back from Reuven and therefore Shimon doesn't get anything, what if I want to keep the upper story for myself? And so first I tell Reuven, you get the house. And then I say, except for the upper story, I want to keep that for myself. What about that? Do we say that since I'm thinking about myself, so I do have intention to hold it back even when I gave it to Reuven? So this is a parallel question to the one above. You see, in this case, if I say almenat, I'm giving it to Reuven on condition that I'm keeping it. For sure, that's a very explicit condition that I'm keeping the upper story for myself. That's for sure. The parallel is when I didn't say a condition and when I gave it to him. So that's the same as giving him a tree. And then I say after, I'm going to keep the fruit, so that I have in mind to keep for myself the part of the tree that grows the fruit, and therefore I get it back? That was the question, and this is where we applied Rav Nachman. Amar Rav Nachman, im timsi lomar bayit le'echad u'diotah le'echad l'haveh shiur, hos mediotah haveh shiur. Ve'alibad Rav Zevid amar she'im rasa losi behem zizin mosi. This is the statement about which Rava, in the name of Rav Nachman, said, even if you think that when I give the house to Reuven and the upper story to Shimon, that I'm not holding back the upper story, and therefore Shimon doesn't get anything. But if I say, except for the upper story, because I'm going to keep it for myself, then and indeed, I do keep it for myself. And this would be the same reasoning, because when it comes to oneself, a person is always generous. You're generous to yourself. So when I gave it to Reuven, I certainly must have had in mind that I'm giving Reuven the house, but not the upper story, because I had in mind that I'm going to keep it for myself, which is not true regarding Shimon, who says I'm more generous to Shimon than I was to Reuven. And so that's where we apply the answer. Now this has an extended application according to Rav Zevid. Rav Zevid says, let's say I did this, I gave the house to Reuven, but I kept the upper story. And now not only do I want to go and live in the upper story or store things there, I also want to have projections come out of the upper story into the courtyard, into the airspace downstairs. So can I do that? I'm sticking these hooks outside the ledge of the upper story. So since they're since they're attached to the upper story, can I do that even though they're extending over the courtyard that I gave to Reuven? And the answer is yes, according to Rav Zavid. Because I said chutz midiota, except for the upper story, that means I'm also using the rights that come along with the upper story, including some of the airspace around it. Alma kevan deshir diota mekom zizina mesheyer hachiname kevan de'amar chutz miperotav mekom pereh sheyer. So what do we see? That since I left over the upper story for myself, I left it out of the deal to give to Uven, not only do I keep the upper story, but also the area around it for projections. That's part of it, as it extends out. And therefore, once we know all that, we can apply that back to our case when I gave to Reuven the palm tree, and I said, except for the fruit, what I had in mind is not only that I'm keeping the fruit for myself, but also the edges of the branches from where the fruit grows. Although that's not the fruit itself. When I say fruit, I mean not just the fruit, but the extensions of the fruit, just like the extensions around the upper story. And so in this version, Rav Nachman actually said a statement about the house, but we can learn from that regarding the tree. So with either version, we learn that if I give someone a palm tree, but then I say I keep for myself the fruit, then it works, because even though the fruit doesn't exist yet, I'm keeping for myself the place from where the fruit grows, and that does exist now. Now, once we quoted one law in the name of Rav Nachman, we're going to be quoting a couple of more laws in the name of Rav Nachman. And this one is a follow-up on the Mishnah. If we remember, the Mishnah a couple of dapim ago said that if someone on his deathbed gives away all of his property, everything, and then he gets better, he gets everything back, because obviously he only gave it away because he thought he was going to be dead. That's why he left nothing for himself. But now that he's alive, he wants it back. He never meant to give everything away if he would be alive. However, if he gives away most of his property, but he keeps even a little bit of land for himself, in that case, we assume that he really wanted to give everything as a gift. And even if he gets better, the gift is a final gift and he cannot take it back, because otherwise, why would he leave over a little for himself? That means he was thinking, even if I'm alive, okay, I'm going to keep this little bit for myself in case I live. And therefore, it's a final sale. So now a follow-up to that. Amar Rav Yosef bar Yomi Amar Rav Nachman שחיברה שכתב כל נכסיו לאחרים. רואים, אם במחלק met kanu kulan, amad hozer bekulan. This is a simple case. Someone on his deathbed wrote all of his property, and he said he gave away all of his property. He said it, and then they wrote it down in a will. So then we see it depends. If he gave everything away, he divided everything up, mechalek, and then he died, so they all get it. And if he lives, then he can take everything back, which is exactly what the Mishnah says. There's no chidush here, but the next part is the chidush. Im ben nimlach. What if at first he gave out only part? He gave half of this field to Reuven, half of the next field to Shimon. He gave only partial, but he kept some for himself. And then he changed his mind. He says, you know what? You take the whole field. You take the whole field, and he gave out everything. So he did it in 2 stages. What about that? Met kanu kulan amad eno chozer ela ba'acharon. If he ends up dying, so then they all get everything that they said they would get. Reuven gets this whole field, Shimon gets this whole field, according to the final thing that he said. But if he gets better, then he can only take back the second part of what he gave away. Why? Makes sense. Because at first, the first step, he says, you get half of this field, you get half of that field. That's only a partial gift, and a partial gift is a final gift, because he kept some for himself. So even if he gets better, that is given away totally. So then the second part, when he says, you get the whole field, you get even the second half of the field, well, in that case, he's not keeping anything for himself. So that second one, since he got better and he didn't keep anything for himself, we assume that he only wanted to give it because he thought he was going to die. But now that he's alive, he can get that part back. So therefore, when he gives things away in 2 stages, the first stage of what he gave away is final. The second stage of what he gave away, he can take back when he gets better. Makes sense. Hold on. Maybe these 2 stages were really not that he changed his mind, but rather that he knew from the beginning he's going to give everything away. But he's just thinking through it step by step. He says, listen, you're going to definitely get half of this field. You get that. Oh, I still have, I gave everybody, at least something. You know what? I'm going to give you all the whole field. Maybe he's thinking through the whole thing, but it's really all one gift, and he's giving everything away. And therefore, even though he said it partially now and partially after a few minutes, it's not that in the beginning he was only going to give part of it away and keep something for himself. He knew from the beginning he wasn't going to keep everything for himself. And therefore, when he gets better, perhaps he should not be able to take anything back. And the answer to that is no, that's not how people usually work. Usually people on their deathbed, they think through everything carefully first in their heads, and then they say, okay, I decided, you get this, you get that, all right, and that's it. So therefore, we do not think that he's thinking through it out loud. That's not what people usually do. So since he said one thing and then he said something else, that means he actually changed his mind. At first, he wanted to give only partial gifts. Partial gifts you can't get back, so those parts you can't get back. And then he changes his mind, says, I want to give everything away. Okay, that section of the second things that he gave away, that he can get back. Amar Rav Acha, Abari min Yomi, Amar Rav Nachman. Another law in the name of Rav Nachman. שכיב אלא שכתב כל נכסיו לאחרים ועמד, אינו חוזר. חיישינן שמא יש לו נכסים במדינה אחרת. Someone on his deathbed that gave away all of his properties to someone else, and then he got better, he cannot get them back. Now, this is against the Mishnah. The reason is because maybe he has properties in another country that we don't know about. And so he's not actually giving everything away. So even though he says regarding all the property that he has around here that we know about here in this country, he says, you get this whole property, you get that whole property. And so it looks like he gave everything away. So now when he gets better, if we applied the Mishnah, he would get everything back because he left nothing for himself. But who knows, maybe he did leave something for himself in a foreign country. So now we ask from the Mishnah, Rav Nachman, according to this law, then where would we apply the law of the Mishnah that said that if I did not leave anything for myself when I gave things away on my deathbed, then when I get better, I get everything back? What would be a possible case where I actually get things back? Because you could always say, oh, maybe he has other property somewhere else. So in what case would the Mishnah apply? Amar Rav Chama beomer kol nechasai mor bar Rav Asher amar b'mochzak lan delet le. Rav Chama says, oh, the Mishnah is talking about a case where he actually says, all of my property I'm giving to Reuven. Rav Nachman was talking about a case where he said, this property and that property, I'm giving the whole thing to you, and that's all the property we know about, but there still could be something else. The Mishnah is talking about a case where I say, all of my property, no matter where it is, that means. And if I find out one day that, he had a property in another country, that will also go to Reuven. So then, surely he's giving away all his property, even that which is overseas. Or another answer by Rav Asher is that we know that he doesn't have any properties anywhere else, right? We have a hazakah that he hasn't traveled over there, and we checked it out, and we have a good reason to presume that he doesn't have property anywhere else. In that case, we say, oh look, he gave away all his property, but now he got better, well then he can get it back. And now another question about a similar case. Chazara b'miksa taveh chazara b'chula ola. The question is, if someone on his deathbed made a partial retraction, is that considered a retraction of the whole thing or not? First, a little background. Someone on his deathbed, if he says right now, I want to give everything to Reuven, and then a few minutes later says, I changed my mind, I'm going to give everything to Shimon. He can do that because as the gift only kicks in when he kicks the bucket. When he's dead, then it goes. So while he's alive, he can change his mind and say whatever he wants. So that we know. Now, the question is, if here we're going to see you can see the exact case from the Braita that we're going to quote to answer it. Tashema, kulan larishon umiksatan lasheni. If someone says, I want to give all of my property to Reuven, and then he says, I want to give half of this field to Shimon. So now, what do we say about that? Does the second statement undo the first statement totally? And now he's saying, you know what? Oh, forget Reuven. I don't want to give anything to Reuven. Instead, I'm going to give half to Shimon, and the other half he's keeping for himself. Does the partial retraction undo the first statement totally? Or maybe what he means is, I want Reuven to keep half of it, but I changed my mind regarding the other half that I'm going to give to Shimon. But he's not keeping anything for himself. That's the question. So this Braita rules, Sheni kana, Rishon lo kana. The second one gets it, the first one doesn't get anything, which would seem to me that we're talking about that the law is that a partial retraction is a full retraction. I gave the whole thing to Reuven. Then I said, I'm giving part of it to Shimon. So Shimon gets part of it, and Reuven gets zero. So that means the second statement undoes the first statement totally. Maila bishemet. So shouldn't we assume we're talking about a case where the guy said this on his deathbed and then actually died? And then that would be a good proof that it's a total retraction, because once he died, everything he said should go through, whether he gave part of it away or all of it away. And therefore, in this case, if you said that a partial retraction is not a retraction of the original statement and Reuven should take half, then why doesn't Reuven get half? He gave everything away, but now he's dead. So everything, all his original gifts should go. Therefore, we see that when he said to Shimon, you get half, that means he's saying, Reuven, I want you to get nothing. So that would be a good proof if, in fact, he died. But then we reject this proof because we say, Lo, b'she'amad. No, the Braita doesn't say, we know it's on his deathbed, but we don't know whether he eventually died or stayed alive. So maybe the Braita is talking about a case where he got better. And if he got better, you know why the gift to Reuven doesn't work? Because that gift to Reuven was a total gift. And anytime you have a total gift and he leaves nothing for himself and he gets better, then that gift he can take back. That's why whatever he gave to Reuven, he gets back. To Shimon, he only gave a partial gift. A partial gift is a permanent gift, even if he gets better. And so there's actually no proof from here that the second statement undoes the first statement. It could be that it doesn't undo the first statement. That Reuven should get everything. And then when he says the second one, Shimon will get part, it means Shimon only gets that part, but Reuven still gets everything else. It could be that that's true, but the outcome is that Reuven gets nothing because that first gift was a total gift, and he got better. And that's why Reuven gets nothing and Shimon gets something. And not only is this a possible reading, it's a more likely reading of this Baraita because we look at the second clause of the Baraita, Midikatani Sefa. Miksatan la Rishon vechulan la Sheni, Rishon kana, Sheni lo kana. This is the other way around. I told Reuven, you get half of this property. And then I said, Shimon, you get the entire property. In that case, the Reuven gets what I gave him because I told him half, and Shimon gets nothing. Now, if you say that the guy in his deathbed got better, then it makes sense. That's why Shimon gets nothing, because I gave Shimon everything. If I give a total, everything away, a total gift, and then I get better, then that's canceled. I can get that back. Whereas to Reuven, I only gave him half of a field, so when I get better, he keeps it because I kept something for myself at the time when I gave it to Reuven. So all this would make sense if I got better. But if the guy in his deathbed died, then both of them should keep something. I gave Reuven part of it, so he should get part of it, and then I gave Shimon everything else. I said, you get everything, meaning everything else. Well then, even though I left nothing for myself, but if I died, then the Reuven should get the part that I gave him, and Shimon should get everything else. But this Baraita doesn't say so. The Baraita, in fact, rules that the first one gets something, the second one doesn't get anything. So it must be that the Sefa is where I got better, and since the Sefa is where I got better, then the Resha is also where I got better. And therefore the Resha is there's no proof from the Resha that a partial retraction retracts the entire first statement. Amar le Rav Yamar Rav Asher, v'teve name b'she'amad. Rav Yamar tells Rav Asher, even if the first clause of the Braita is where I got better, nevertheless, I actually can prove that a partial retraction is a full retraction. How so? Follow the logic. If you say that the second statement of a partial retraction is a full retraction, right? Remember the cases where I gave everything to Reuven, and then I say I want to give part of it to Shimon. So that means that Reuven gets nothing, right? What I meant by that is that, Reuven, forget it. You're not getting anything. I'm giving part to Shimon, and I'm keeping part for myself. If you say that, Hainu desheni mihat kaneh. That's why it makes sense that Shimon will get something, because even though I got better, I kept something for myself and I gave Shimon part of it. Since it's only a partial gift and I get better, that is a final gift. So that makes sense why Shimon should get something. Because I took everything back from Reuven, I keep part. That's why it's a final gift when I get better. But if you say that a partial gift is not a partial retraction is not a retraction, well then it's like I'm dividing out all of my property, because I told Reuven you're going to get everything, and then I tell Shimon you get part of it. If that means that Reuven still gets part of it and Shimon gets part of it, and I leave nothing for myself, then when I get better, I should be able to get everything back, because I gave everything away and I didn't hold anything for myself, and therefore the ruling of the Baraita would not be true. So from the fact that the Baraita says that Shimon keeps his part, that means that it must be when I gave Shimon part of it, I retracted everything from Reuven, and therefore no matter how you interpret the Resha, whether when the guy in his deathbed died or got better, either way, you can in fact prove that a partial retraction is a full retraction, and that's how we sum up. And so the final halacha is that a partial retraction is a full retraction. The first half of a Baraita can be explained in a case whether the guy in his deathbed ended up dying or whether he got better. It would be true either way. And the Sefa can only be explained if the guy got better. We now ask another series of questions, also regarding the same topic. If someone is on his deathbed and he says, I'm consecrating all my property, I want everything that I own to be donated to the Bet HaMikdash. So, and then let's say he gets better. So what do we say about that? Do we say that when it comes to Hekdesh, making things consecrated, a person really has in mind to give it totally away, and even if he gets better, he completely decided that he's going to give everything away? In other words, is this different from giving everything to Reuven? If you give, Mishnah said, if I give away all of my property to Reuven on my deathbed, and then I get better, then I get it back, because we assumed that I only had in mind to give it to him because I thought I was going to die. But if I'm going to live, then I want it. But when it comes to Ekdesh, maybe someone says, oh, I'm going to make it holy. This is a beautiful thing. So he decides to completely transfer it, even if he gets better. Or maybe not. Maybe, when it comes to one's own welfare, a person is going to be concerned for my welfare, and if I get better, I need it back. And therefore, he does not completely resolve to give it to Hekdesh. And so it's not Hekdesh until and only if he dies. That's question one. What if a person on his deathbed says, everything I own is ownerless. Anyone who wants can come and take it. Do we say in this case, since who's going to take it? Poor people, rich people, everybody's going to take it. So you know what? He decided he really wants to give it away, because some of the people that will get it will be poor people and he's helping them. And so that means even if he gets better, he cannot take it back. Or do we say when it comes to a person's own welfare, then he does not resolve to transfer everything unconditionally. If he gets better, then he gets to keep it. Third question, what if he on his deathbed said, I want all my property to be given only to poor people? So now only poor people are going to get it. Do we say on the one hand, since it's tzedakah, since it's charity, so certainly he resolves to completely transfer it without any conditions. And even if he got better, he cannot take it back. It's different from giving it as a gift to a friend, where, okay, I'm giving it as a friend if I die, but if I live, I want it. But since since here it's giving it to tzedakah, so surely he completely decides not going to take it back from tzedakah, or maybe not. Or do we say when it comes to his own welfare, yes, I'll give it to tzedakah if I die. What am I going to do with it? But if I live, then I need it for myself to live. Then I didn't want to give it back, and I can take it back if I end up getting better. And we leave all these questions unresolved. That's all one version of the questions. We had another version that's the same, it's just shorter. Lishana charina, hikdish kol nechasav mahu, hifkid kol nechasav mahu, chilek kol nechasav mahu, laniim mahu, tekom. The second version maybe is the original version. It's just a shorthand, bullet points, and then the first version is the one that's more elaborated. You can see how these types of questions were transmitted, and so in this short version it just says, if someone consecrated all his property, what's the law? If he gives it away, what's the law? If he gives it only to poor people, what's the law? And so this is a short version, and the elaborated version is where they would say, here's a reason why you could say this, here's a reason why you could say that. And you can imagine that these would be exercises for the students to say, okay, now elaborate on this side and bring proofs and disproofs for this side and arguments for the other side. So all these questions are left unresolved, meaning that we keep them open so that the students will continue debating them. We end the daf by examining several different formulations, verbs, and see what they mean. Amar Rav Sheshat, Yitol v'yizkeh v'yachazik v'yikneh kulan leshon matana hen. If someone says, this person shall take this property, or he can merit this property, or he'll hold on to this property, or he will acquire this property. All these are statements of giving a gift. Even though he didn't say explicitly gift, these are all synonyms. Matnita Tana, Af Yahasen Virat Bera'ui L'Yosho Ve'Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka Hi. There is a baraita that says, if someone says, this person shall receive an inheritance, or will inherit, Yiras, he's using an Aramaic instead of a Hebrew term, if it's a person who is in line to inherit him, then that is considered a proper inheritance. And this would follow the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, who says that a person can give to anyone who's in line to inherit him. He can say, instead of giving to all my sons equally, I want to give to this son. You know what? Instead of giving to my sons, I want it to go to my daughter. He can do all that. So within his opinion, if he uses any of these terms, Yachasin Yirat, then that is considered a language of an inheritance. Iba'yalehu, yehene bahen mahi, deneveku lehu matana kamar, o dilma litnehe minaihu midi ka'amar. And so now some questionable terminology. If someone says, this person shall enjoy the property, does that mean that he will get the whole property as a gift and thereby enjoy it, and it really does mean a gift? Or maybe he means he will get some benefit out of it, meaning he'll be allowed to go and use it for a little while, get some partial benefit, but I'm not actually giving him the property, and he doesn't get it as a gift. Or what if he says, Yera'eh behen mahu, ya'amod behen mahu, yisha'en bahu mahu, teko. If a person on his deathbed says, this person shall be seen in my property, or he'll stand in my property, or he'll lean on or rely on my property. What does that mean? That he can just walk around in it, but it's not his? Or it means if he says he'll be seen in it, stand in it, that means a way of saying I'm giving it to him, and these questions are not resolved. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Im Amad eno hozer, ve'zimnin Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Im Amad hozer. What if a person on his deathbed doesn't give away, but sells all his property? If he gives everything away as a gift on his deathbed, and gives it to his friends, family, cousins, whoever. If he gives away everything and then he gets better, Mishnah said he gets everything back because he only gave it on condition. But what if he sells all his property and he gets money in return and then he gets better? Can he undo those sales? So Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, says if he gets better, no, sorry, it's a sale, it's a final sale. He got money for it. So even though it was on his deathbed, we assume that he wanted these things to be a final sale. However, other times Rav Yehuda Yudah quoted Rav as saying the opposite, that if he gets better, he can undo those sales and say, give me my land back, here's the money back. So how could he say different things at different times? And there's no contradiction between them. If he has the actual money still in his hands, so he just sold this field for $100,000, he has those coins in his hands, and then he gets better, then he says, okay, take the coins back and give me back my land. But if he already used up those coins, he had to pay a debt or whatever, however he used the coins, he doesn't have them anymore, well then, when he gets better, he can no longer renege on the sale. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.